Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Family Business, where we discuss the intertwining of careers and family. And I'm proud to introduce you to Michelle Ortiz. She is an individual I've known for it feels like ever and a day. And she's an exemplary example of trying how to figure all this out and still make your family and business all successful at the same time. So, Michelle, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Matt.
I appreciate you being on. You're one of the people I thought of in the beginning, and I'm glad we got our schedules aligned and got you in here. So, Michelle is one of the more optimistic, upbeat people that I know, and so I'm looking forward to having this conversation because she's a bit of a character. We have one thing in common. We're both Gators, and so I think we bonded over that initially, probably 17, 18 years ago. Yeah, and it's just funny how it doesn't take much to feel connected to somebody, but that was ours. Could you take about a minute and just give a quick snapshot of where you are today and what you do so everyone has some context of who you are, and then we can kind of delve into the fun stuff?
No, sure thing. So, Michelle Ortiz, I am mother and wife. Via background, I'm a biomedical engineer, like Matt said, from the University of Florida. Currently, about a year ago, I joined DSM Biomedical. We are a division out of DSM Royale. And my title is Senior Global Marketing and Commercial Excellence Director. And excited to be here. I'm actually responsible for the downstream marketeers, as well as a highly technical group of individuals that we call ADTSs, Application Development and Technical Support. Probably the best way to describe their role is if our sales partners are the hunters, our ADTSs are our farmers. So a tremendous amount of focus on the customer interaction. So that's me in a nutshell, 20 plus years of medical device experience.
Yeah, I mean, she's being a little humble, folks. She's accomplished quite a bit along the way, and DSM, for those who don't know, is a massive corporation. I mean, 10 billion, I think, in
Yeah,
revenue, something like that.
indeed, over $10 billion conglomerate of different divisions, right? Nutrition, healthcare sciences within medical devices, as well as serving the pharma markets.
So, just so I understand, because I don't know the answer to this, is from a healthcare standpoint, percentage-wise of their business, is this a big part of what they do, or is it a smaller part of what they do?
My division is probably a small part of what they do as it pertains to the biomedical division. We are biomaterial experts. There's somewhat a duality on our strategy, right? Because of us being the biomaterial experts, we're able to serve the markets. But this is a very small division within that $10 plus billion conglomerate. But excited. I mean, it's a lot of innovation. It's somewhat of a startup hub, if you will. We're growing exponentially. And as such, actually, funny that you say that. Earlier this year, we announced that we are graduating into merging into our largest division, which is our nutrition division. So we're actually going to be a part of that. So I'm extremely excited to be a part of that journey.
Awesome. Well deserved, I'm sure. That's great. So, I don't really know much about your origin. I don't know if we've ever talked about this. Where'd you grow up?
Puerto Rico. So born and raised in Puerto Rico.
Okay, so when did you come over to Florida?
When I was 17. So I
Okay.
wanted to be a biomedical engineer. That was kind of like the catalyst for my
Mm-hmm.
move. We don't have that type of engineering science back home, actually to this day. So I moved in 1994, a while back. I was 17. I'm going to be 45 this September. So I've been here for a while now.
Yeah. A lot of water under the bridge, but look what you've done with those years.
Indeed. And again, the catalyst was kind of like that interest in being a biomedical engineer. And at the time, there were very few schools or universities, right, that offered a biomedical engineering program per se. And the University of Florida was one of them. So that's how I said, let's do that.
So just to take a minute on that. So how do you because remember, this is not exactly last year where the internet, is everywhere and it's ubiquitous and all the information is right here. You're in Puerto Rico. This is, and I hate to say it out loud, but 30 years ago. And how did you make contact? How did you get information? How did you identify that there were these programs? Like, where did you even begin?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So actually, the first time that I heard the biomedical engineering term was my pediatrician. So I must have been like 7, 8 years old. And they ran a series of tests. I guess my mom thought that I was really smart, and they did a series of tests. And I remember vividly when we went to get the results with my mom, the doctor told my mom, she's extremely smart. and I think she's going to be the next biomedical engineer. Her daughter was a biomedical engineer. So that's the first time I heard the term biomedical engineering. So I became fascinated with it. And I started to do my search, if you will, evidently when I came of age, probably around middle school. And that just was ingrained in my mind. I'm going to be a biomedical engineer. And started doing some research and come to find out again at the time, a good friend of my mom, her daughter was going to the University of Florida in architecture. So she's the first one that connected me with the University of Florida world, if you will, gave me the catalog again back then, right? Paper catalog. And I remember going to her house and just having a discussion right around college. And again, I am in middle school. So just being that laser focus, and that drive. And I said, you know what, this is what I want. And I did it. And at the time, there were 5 areas of specialty. So I went into the cell and tissue regeneration. And to this day, here we are.
There's a lot there. So I always ask this question whenever I hear of something like this, where one person has such a profound impact on you, but it's small at the beginning. And then it turns into this. The ripples are massive. Did you ever tell her that you went to school based on her? And does she know who you are, like, to this day?
Yeah, to this day. As a matter of fact, every time that I go back home, which is quite often, I visit them and we get to talk. And I've been in touch with her daughter, who's a biomedical engineer up north. No, absolutely. These are people, again, Puerto Rico is 100 by 35, right? It's a tiny island of the Caribbean. So kind of like everybody knows everybody, particularly in my hometown. Mm-hmm. So no, these, and actually it's a couple. Their husband and wife was the practice. Dr. Mubarak is their name. And no, they have always been in my life. And I guess I'm grateful for that.
Well, it's always a combination of two things. It's someone giving you something and then you taking it. And because people can give to their children, to their friends, to the people they work with, but if the other person doesn't receive it and do something with it, then it's just left laying on a table. So it's truly amazing how this woman changed your life just because of, in an offhanded almost comment.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really amazing. It's funny, how can I talk to you this many times and not know this story? I mean, that's really amazing to me. So, all right, so let's talk about that for a second. So now you have 2 girls of your own.
Right.
And you have this love of biomedical engineering and the healthcare space and from a technical standpoint. And you have obviously this high horsepower intellect and push for education and all this. How does it filter down to your girls with STEM and other things that are available now? Or are they not like you and they want to dance and they do something totally the opposite of what you do?
Absolutely. So I think that's a compounded question, right? I think the first guiding principle, if you will, that I think I got from my parents is that strong sense of education, right? Irrespective of what you end up going into. Evidently, I have a strong bias towards STEM and the hardcore sciences. But it's interesting. I married a very creative guy that actually he ended up being an attorney, but extremely creative. So I have a sense of appreciation for that. And in my girls, so the oldest one, Katia, she's 14. She's in high school now. Karina's 8, so she's still a little, just I think she has more time. But the oldest one has expressed interest in being an actress.
Really?
And I know. So that's a bit out there, but listen, I will support her 100%. Now, mind you, she's extremely academically oriented. All A student, athlete. She's actually been playing varsity soccer since she was in 7th grade. So that gives you a sense of, again, the drive, if you will, which I think they
that's unheard of.
Get that. Yeah. So a lot of focus.
Are you athletic?
No. Listen, hey, hold on. I get one. Listen, in all honesty, so I've always danced. I danced and I actually taught kids in college on the side to make more money, ballroom dance, that is. But no, I don't think I'm athletic. And actually, furthermore, and I guess it's somewhat contradictory, but I don't think I'm the most coordinated individual either. I'm left-handed, so I guess there's a level of creativity, if you will, that comes with that. But neither here nor there, not. So the girls, so back to the question. So no, I think, listen, again, for me, the guiding principle is in that regard, right? Have a strong base, have a good education, something that you can rely on, because right, when it's all said and done, that's what you have besides your own your dreams and your goals. So I will support them 100%, irrespective of where they choose, whether to go into STEM or a more creative.
Do your daughters have a similar mindset on going to university and pushing as far as the envelope will go educationally, or as you're saying, she may have aspired to be on stage and that may not be the route for her?
No, the first one. I mean, and that's a non-negotiable in the house. For sure. University 100%. That's listen, I grew up not even knowing that not going to university was an option, right?
Yeah,
My
me
parents
too.
were first generation college graduates. So yeah, I no, Matt, there's that's a non-negotiable. And we made that very clear. No, and again, both of them, again, the little one, again, she's only 8. But I can tell you both of them are extremely academically oriented. You know, I'll give you an example, even in this pandemic, at the onset of it, right? We were holding them back, and then we've been blessed to where they attend a great private school, and the school adapted fairly quickly. So they gave us 3 options, namely they could go back 100%, we could do a hybrid program, or we could do 100% remote. Both of them wanted to go back 100%. And furthermore, sometimes you want to have these family days where you stay at home. And I've gotten to the point now that I kind of like pass it by my oldest one, right? Because sometimes I don't want to create more stress than anything, right? There's some Fridays that you're just like, let's have a family day, right? And we do that. We do that often. And sometimes, I let her know Thursday nights. And there's times that she's like, Mommy, no, I can't tomorrow, right? I cannot do it. And I'm like, okay, baby, I respect that. We'll do it in a couple of weeks' time or something. So I think it's important. Sometimes we keep them at home and we do those family days.
Well, I think that first of all, she's aging, and there's only going to be a small window until she goes off and tackles the world on her own. And so you want to squeeze it in. My wife is with my daughter, same thing. They always want to squeeze in as many times as they can because it's a finite amount of time that they're in the house full time like that. And so I think that's great. And I'm sure it's not harming her education in any way, although it sounds like she's very protective of it.
For sure.
Yeah. So when you first came here to the U.S., and this is at school and when you first get out, does it resonate at all, or anybody care that you're from Puerto Rico? Does that come up? Or because you're in South Florida, well, not really South Florida, you're Central Florida, does your accent resonate? Does it make people curious about you? Like, what was that like being 17 from Puerto Rico?
For sure. Listen, I'm not sure if the accent resonated as much. I still don't think that it does, right? Now, to your point, right? Central Florida, had I been in Miami, probably a little bit more, but and again, I say back then, but still 1994, right? It's a long time. But certainly it sparks a lot of the discussion, right? Where are you from? Most people actually even venture and say, hey, are you from Puerto Rico? And I think it has to do with the mannerisms. Evidently, I think I look 100% Puerto Rican, right? As I used to joke around whenever I was in a presentation and say, well, as you all know, I'm from Russia, or, just to kind of like break the ice. But listen, what was it like? Wow. I have actually a really fun anecdote. So I went to school with a professional NFL player. I will reserve the name.
Okay.
I actually ended up tutoring him for math in my first year. And he missed the first 2 tutoring sessions. And by the third one, he shows up, and I'm giving him kind of like my expectations. Listen, you need to be here on time. This is my time. I get paid per session. And his response was, well, do you know who I am? I had no idea. I mean, of course, I repeated the name back to him, and he's like, oh, no, clearly you don't know who I am. Again, he was an athlete. Yeah. And that was really funny because he's like, when he realized, it's like, you really don't know who I am. Where are you from, right? Unless you've been under a rock. So no, and listen, it was interesting, right? I mean, navigating through this melting pot, if you will. But I had a lot of fun with it. And people were very supportive, right? Some more than others, like anything. But ultimately, I'm really proud of my heritage and where I'm at now.
Well, look, it's interesting. You either use it as a point of strength or you let it weaken you, and you turn around and make it something fun and make it something interesting, and it becomes a bit of a quirky kind of personality and something people gravitate to than the other way around. I find that because we do so much international work here, the
Hmm.
folks from outside the US seem to have almost a bit of an advantage because their name is different, their accent is different, their perspective, their approach, their sense of humor, sometimes lack thereof, is a part of it, but it comes from not being from here.
Right.
And so it's interesting how that happens. Now, you got into orthopedics early on, and that was a bit of a boys' club back then, and kind of still is to an extent. So I'm curious how that was for you. I mean, you probably were the only woman in the room on a few occasions.
I'm still are, right?
I'll
So
bet.
now this very interesting. A lot of it is again the convergence with again with my background, right? The biomedical engineering, if you will. So my research work actually focused on cell and tissue, both the remodeling cascade for soft tissue and bone. So it was really in the maxillofacial space, but really the convergence and why I ended up in orthopedics fairly quickly in my career was because a lot of that research that you take for craniofacial really comes from the orthopedic side, right? Namely, whatever modalities you use in that space on that critical size defect. Well, the assumption is that it will work as well for a smaller defect size, i.e., craniofacial. But you're absolutely right. Now, I was fascinated, so I started at the University of Florida Tissue Bank, and that's what spun off and became Regeneration Technologies, right, to this
Mm-hmm.
day. And that's kind of like where I started my career. Actually, I started since it was the University of Florida Tissue Bank as an unpaid intern. But that was the training grounds, if you will. So then when I finished my research work, I started working with them full time. They brought me on board. And I remember to this day, the marketing director took me under his wing. Danny Lee, you probably know him.
I do, but it's been a long time since I spoke with him.
Yeah. So, and he took me under his wing. Him and Michael Esch, who was at the time one of the executives as well on the R&D side. And I remember the first time that I attended surgery with Dr. Meister and Indelicato, right? They were the team surgeons for the University of Florida, which actually Dr. Indelicato used to be the team surgeon for the Miami
Yep.
Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
So, Matt, I can tell you to this day what I was wearing, what I felt when I walked into that OR theater, what the overall experience, right? And being able to communicate at a technical level with the surgeons and the staff, and then being able to bring that back into, again, corporate and translate that into a solution. I was hooked. I was hooked. And shortly thereafter is when I made the switch to the dark side of marketing, right? from product development
Yep.
as an engineer. So that was exciting. And as I reflect back, probably one of the best decisions that I made, even being so young, right? And so early in my career.
Yeah, your most of your decisions seem to have been catapults of different kinds throughout your career. I mean, I've seen you through most of them. The decisions that you've made, though, and some of the things you probably have turned down as well as accepted, how much of your family was involved in that, and your husband and your girls? Like, where were they in that process as far as the choices that you made?
Absolutely. So listen, family is instrumental, right? I think my mom and my dad were through and through, and some of these decisions, as I reflect with you on this call, certainly beyond the family and the immediate family, if you will, is it's about surrounding yourself with good people. Because again, as I'm self-reflecting with you now on those big decisions, there has always been one or a set of individuals that were great people, right? And genuinely had my best interest at heart. And if you will, they influenced that. But I listen, my mom and my dad, when they were alive, I used to call my mom 3, 4 times a day, right? But and then my husband, right? So I met Mario the last year of my undergraduate school, so back in 1998, and I knew I wanted to go into graduate school, and again, you fall in love, but I still had that focus. So when you asked me, right, what level of influence they had, I remember calling mom and saying, "Mom, I met the guy," and and again, after years of a relationship, we've both shared that common sense of wanting to do better, right? So he has always been a big supporter, and we always say here in the house, we have a winning attitude, right? So now with the girls, like you say, how has that evolved? Well, it's been an evolution, right? I've always traveled, I've always worked hard. They recognize that that we do it for a purpose, right? Number one, I love what I do. It has a purpose, but furthermore, they support it. So it's a unit, right? We operate as a unit. It's a team, and yeah, we just work together towards a common goal. Now, it's not easy. I'm not saying that it's easy, but ultimately, we all recognize that, and with that, it also comes sacrifices.
Yeah, and I think it's all about communication. As long as people understand what's happening and what's coming, you can't be surprised. You may not like it, but at least there's no surprise. Now, there's another portion to your family that we hadn't talked about. Now, Mario has a daughter when you came into the relationship, yeah?
Indeed. So she was a year and a half old when we met. Correct.
Wow. Okay, so that's something, if you're comfortable talking about it, because I've never really explored that with you. So you come into a relationship, she's a year and a half, you're an up-and-coming professional. You know your career is going to go, and yet you decide to take a substantial shortcut into forming a family and getting one that's just add water and you have a family. So what was that like, getting involved and trying to figure out your career, saying, wow, I'm going to be technically a mother once I marry this gentleman?
Right. Right. So listen, I don't think I had the line of sight that the relationship was going to be that serious, right? When we first met, he was very upfront about it. He told me from week one that we actually met. Furthermore, at the time, full disclosure, we didn't know if it was his.
Oh my goodness.
Correct. So we went through that process together because by the time, so we met on a summer, 1998. That December, we knew it was going to be forever. And he made his intentions very clear. And he told me, I need to meet your parents, right? Because this was all at the University of Florida. And I told him, well, listen, if you're going to be sitting in my parents' living room, I think we need to sort this out. So we went through that DNA process together. And at that point, to your question, that's when I realized, not that I'm going to be a mom, I'm already a mom, right? I had already been doing the work, right? Not realizing. And now I've always loved children, right? I mean, if you ask my husband what he fell in love with me, he always has the same answer. He says her heart, which for me, it's like, it's so flattering. But in all honesty, I love children. I love people, right? So it's funny because I remember thinking, my gosh, if this guy and I end up breaking up, it's going to be double whammy because I'm in love with this child already.
Yeah, you really doubled down right there.
Yes, exactly. But no, and then listen, there's no manual, right? I mean, they come to you and you figure it out. And it's interesting because again, once I had because then I didn't have children for a long time, right? Maria and I got married and we really wanted to travel the world and enjoy ourselves. So we were together for easily, actually 6.5 years with our children. But of course, Jana has always been in my life, and no, I became mom.
What does she call you?
Mommy.
Is that right?
Mommy, yes, absolutely. And actually, through the years, our relationship is so good. There was a time there that she wanted to come and live with me, right before the teenage years, kind of like at the onset of teenage years. And I sat her down, and those are those courageous discussions that you never want to have. But I told her, no, baby, because you want to come live with me for the wrong reasons, right? I mean, she was starting to argue with mom and this, that, and the other. And I have a lot of respect for mom. And again, I told her one day I'm going to be a mom and I would not want my child to leave me, right? So I told her, no, listen, baby, this is the right decision, right? Stay with mom. We'll have a dialogue. But to this day, so she's 20-some years old now. And actually, she's coming this weekend.
She's a Gator, right? She's there now?
Yes, yes. She's a graduate with honors too. So we're very proud of her, extremely proud of her.
You've had quite a life already.
Indeed.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about Harvard. You spent a little time there?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
And so what was the program?
So it was the executive program for executive managers. Gosh, what I remember about it. So I was as big as a house because I was pregnant with my first child. And it's a wonderful program. And at the time I was with Smith & Nephew and they tailored the program for us. Namely, you spend a good amount with a couple of individuals, the right stakeholders for the program. And they developed a specific program based on your goals, your career orientation, and evidently some of the projects that you're involved with. And at the time, again, being in wound care with Smith & Nephew, it was remarkable. It was over a course of 3 years. I actually did it in an abbreviated format, yet accelerated because my due date was coming. So it was great. It was absolutely great. It was out of Memphis. A few times we had to go up north live for some of the presentations and some of the casework that we needed to do. But it was incredible. It was incredible. The probably the most memorable incident that I have is on the very last module. Like I mentioned, I was as big as a house, pregnant with my first one with Katia. And I started to have these fainting spells, Matt. And listen, so anyway, so we're in the class and I remember having to go to the restroom, and I turned to one of my colleagues and I told her, listen, I'll be back. I need to go to the restroom. And I remember her looking at me and saying, Michelle, you don't look well. Are you okay? Do you want me to go with you? And I said, no, that's okay. Matt, I passed out on my way to the restroom from the classroom. I don't remember anything. I remember just waking up in the hospital.
Holy cow.
And talking about an organization with excellence and the customer and our employees in mind. My boss at the time, Edward Armstrong, called Mario directly. By the time he had called Mario, they had already booked him on a flight, first class, to go pick me up. And Ed told Mario, and by the way, she's done traveling. I've been telling her to slow down, but she's done. And that was it, So it's funny because you asked me one of the most memorable experiences, again, getting that Harvard education, but also thinking and reflecting, gosh, what am I doing to myself, So that was it for me. I stopped traveling. And but I got that degree.
Yeah, that's a foregone conclusion with you. You don't start, then you don't finish. It's funny. We have that in common. My wife wanted to travel, like right up until she gave birth. And the doctor looks at me and he looks back at her. And I look at him and I'm trying through my mind, through the mental telepathy of saying, look, tell her she's nuts, please. And he goes, you're not going anywhere. She wanted to go to California when she was like 8.5 months pregnant to close the deal or whatever it was. And he said, no. And she's like, why not? He goes, because you're going to have the baby on the plane. Is that what you want? Do you want to have the baby on the plane? Right. No. Okay. Then you stay here. And so sure enough, Olivia came 5 weeks early. And it's a good thing she didn't go because she probably would have been in California at the time. So thank goodness the doctors sometimes step up. So I imagine Mario's flight to Boston was a little horrifying for him.
Yeah. Well, at the time that was Memphis. So this one class, we took it out of Memphis because what they did is, again, we had to go to Boston,
right,
in locations, but most of the courses, because of Smith & Nephew's big headquarters and manufacturing facility being out of Memphis for their executives, they will fly us to Memphis for those courses.
You had mentioned to me something once before, and again, if you don't want to cover it, it's fine, but you had mentioned to me that your older one has Crohn's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so how is that for her, being so athletic and on stage and being academic, and for you and as a family, how it affects your career when you're traveling, knowing that she has to look out for herself? Well, I'm sure obviously Mario's there, but still she's old enough now that she has to decide what she can and cannot eat or medication. So give me a little backstory there, please.
Sure. So listen, a profound impact. You probably recall, but when she's actually the reason why I separated from corporate America.
Yeah.
So she's 14 now, but at the time she must have been 8. And listen, what 80-year-old doesn't come to you and tells you, mommy, my tummy aches, right? Yeah. But it just became different. And as a mother, I just knew something was off, right? So we were relentless on pursuing a diagnosis. We were fortunate enough to have a great pediatrician, which he guided us through the entire process. Actually, he connected us with the specialist that she is with today. So first things first, right? Had a profound impact. Namely, I, as a mom, I decided this is priority number one, right? I need to separate from corporate America and I need to pour myself into her health. And that's what I did. So probably within 6 months time, we landed on the diagnosis. And it was devastating, right? I mean, short of someone telling you you have cancer, it's a chronic disease. It's something that she, to your point, she has learned to live with. Likewise, and I remember the doctor telling me at the time, listen, Michelle, she will grow into the disease. Namely, she will mature and it will get to where she will make her own decisions. And that's exactly where we're at, Matt. Namely, there's certain things, right? There's certain restrictions, but again, what 14-year-old doesn't want? Because her biggest trigger is dairy.
Yeah.
She has a severe allergy to a protein, which is a byproduct of what cows eat. So she can have milk if it's grass-fed. But I'll give you an example, ice cream, right? If it's dairy, she will be in the bathroom, right? Within 5 minutes time. But listen, there's times that she will tell me, Mommy, I want it. And again, at this point, I let her make the decisions because it's her body, it's her life.
Right.
And she is extremely disciplined, right? Again, she knows that her choices will have consequences. So at this point, I'm happy to report that it's been close to a year and a half that we have been able to manage her Crohn's with just diet and the restrictions. And we, as a family, we decided to take her out of the medicine with the consultancy of her doctor. But it's a lifetime commitment to her health, right? We get her checked every 3 months. Every other year, she needs to get a colonoscopy. So it's day to day for us, but she's doing great. She's doing great and she's thriving. And to your point, right? She's an athlete, so she knows what she needs to do when she needs to do it. She knows that she needs to probably take more Gatorade than other people, right? Because part of the Crohn's is that you just eliminate the nutrients. But she's really good with it. She's really good with it. And of course, I'm mama bear, so I'm constantly asking her how are
this
you.
I know. Well, that
And
must be so hard for you. Is where do you step in and where do you step back? It must be maddening, especially you have a younger daughter too. So it's not like you can spend 100% on Katya. You have another child.
Yes, but listen, I have some routines, right? And in the sense that every afternoon, right, they get on the car and I go through a list, a checklist, right? And of course, the checklist for the 8-year-old is different than the 14-year-old, but it's fairly detailed to where how many times you go to the bathroom, to some details that I won't say on this call. But no, and she's like, Mom, please, and I'm like, I need you to take a picture. But listen, when we go to the doctor, that's exactly what she needs to report on, right? How many times, how does it look? And yeah, that kind of thing. So she's used to it now. Again, she's 14 now. So.
Yeah, my son is 14 as well. And and it's interesting, the dynamic with boys and girls now is now all of a sudden he's hanging out with girls. And I don't know if she's having to deal with this now with boys and now having her mother asking her about when she goes to the bathroom. It must be very challenging. Because I know my son, if I ask him any questions, he just gives me the eye, like, you better stop talking. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, and if you have the youngest one, which you do, right? So Karina is asking her the same questions too, but like just doing to aggravate her.
That's what they do best.
Exactly.
Are they both like you personality-wise?
You know what? Yes and no. I think they're both a combination of my husband and I, right? But particularly the smallest one is very reserved, whereas I am kind of like an open book.
Yeah, reserved would not describe you, no.
Exactly. So, but I would say both of them have elements of me and Mario for sure. And listen, my mother and some of the extended family, I can definitely see it in both of them for that matter.
Yeah. Imagine the world with 2 more of you. Jeez, good luck.
You sound like Mario.
I'm sure. That poor guy. So with it being, was it last month where there was all the, so much on social media about Women's Day and women's growth within business and on and on and on. And we here at the firm are proud to say that how much I work with female executives is actually more than males when I do my stats. But I am curious because we started talking about this, but we got sidetracked, is being the only woman in the room, being the one voice that's unique in that scenario, especially in orthopedics where it's so masculine driven. I'm curious, number one, how does that feel in the beginning when we're still lacking maybe some confidence early on, and now where you have a ton of confidence, but you're still the only voice there? What is it like being in that room?
Sure. So listen, I think you nailed that answer. Namely, if you ask me, 15, 20 years ago, right? Probably very different. I think the thing that I always tell my girls, to your point of the Women's Day, is be very assertive. And being assertive comes with knowing what you want and the role that you play at any given circumstance. And then be deliberate whenever you have a thought, whenever you have an idea. And I can tell you, for me, that's the one thing that has never changed, right? Probably I've built more confidence as I've gotten older, well, evidently I have. But I can tell you at a very early age, and I have to thank my mom, actually both my mom and my dad for this, but my mom and my dad always said, know what you want and go after it, right? And I think that thought stems again from that education, but furthermore, when you turn that into the career, I remember, again, to your point, and to this day, being in a room where I'm the only female, but I've considered always myself one of the guys, right? But I have the confidence in myself to where if I have a thought, an idea, or even a question, right? I'm very deliberate on raising my hand and say, hey, have we considered this? Or, hey guys, I'm not following. What does that mean? And I do that with my girls, but again, particularly the oldest one now, where I'm just like, Katya, you need to know what you want, right? Because for me, it all stems from that, and then being able to act upon it. So, however, contrasting that with where I'm at now, I am blessed to work with a very, very diverse group. My organization, DSM Biomedical, does an incredible job at that diversification, if you will, and inclusion, right? Because it's one thing to look around the table and see different people, different cultures, different sexes. But if you don't include them, right, that doesn't say anything, right? It's not to say, oh, well, yeah, I'm inviting you to the party, but am I going to invite you to dance? And I think there's,
all right,
right,
I like it. Yep.
And my organization does a beautiful job. They're extremely elegant at the diversification, but also at the inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, it's when they do it for show, it's almost more agonizing and patronizing. You're like, you literally just asked me here so I can just be a face at the table. I don't know. It makes my blood boil. I mean, my wife is like you, just pushed and pushed and pushed to get to where she is. And I have a daughter, and I have a sister and a niece, and on and on and on. And I've always been just a firm believer in it shouldn't matter what the name is on top of the resume. It shouldn't matter, who's on the agenda of who's going to be there that day. The meeting is the meeting, and the people there are just a part of it. It doesn't matter any of the other data points, and yet still for some people it seems to. Well, look, I could talk to you all day, but I've seriously enjoyed this, and you're every bit as what I thought you were. Is there any stories or anecdotes that I've missed about your family or something that we should cover?
I think we touched on a lot.
yeah, there's a lot to unpack for sure. Well, look, this has been a fantastic episode. This is the Family Business, where we talk about family and how it binds you. Thanks so much, Michelle Ortiz, for being a part of it. Look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you, Matt. Take care.